A blistering United Nations report says that welfare policies in the UK could lead to the creation of modern-day workhouses. The report finds that women, racial and ethnic minorities, children, single parents, persons with disabilities and members of other historically marginalised groups face, quote, disproportionately high risks of poverty. Now, although the UK is the world's fifth largest economy, the report found that 14 million people there, or around 20% of its population, live in poverty. There are record levels of hunger and homelessness, and the number of people sleeping rough has greatly increased. Life expectancy is shown to be falling in some demographics. The report blamed years of austerity for weakened community services, along with a vast reduction in policing and legal aid. Well, Kartik Raj from Human Rights Watch joined me earlier from New York. Now, his research is focused around human rights in Western Europe, and he spent some time earlier with Professor Alston, the UN Special Rapporteur, who carried out the research. And I asked him how a rich nation like Britain could have such a large number of people living in poverty.
The answer really has to do with policy choices that have been decided upon and implemented over the course of the last decade, motivated by austerity, and that have really squeezed, in particular, families and single-parent families with children.
And why have those families and children been particularly hit?
Well, since a series of governments began their program of austerity in 2010, there have been a number of decisions around how to prioritize expenditure on welfare, the welfare state in the UK. And over that period of time, the overall spending on welfare for children and families has gone down 44%. Now, governments do have a right or an ability and a discretion to change how they fund things, but they have to be very careful not to make those cuts in a way that are disproportionate and that affect people's rights negatively, particularly where those people have additional protections because, say, they're children or they're people with disabilities or they're women, for example.
It's quite shocking statistics, but what would your recommendations be then?
Well, our recommendations in our research, our recent research, which we published earlier this week, we focused on a rise in hunger in the UK. So there's been a 50-fold increase in people using food banks across the UK, which is a shocking statistic in and of its own. So one of the things we called for is the right to food to be respected in UK domestic law. And then there's very specific changes to the restructuring of the welfare system, a really ambitious program of restructuring the welfare system that the UK government is undertaking that the government can and should do and are definitely within its power. For example, removing a policy that limits child welfare benefits to children beyond the second one. So, in effect, large families with additional children are penalised, and the children are penalised simply for the order in which they were born through no decision of their own. Things like that can be changed. Things like welfare being paid up front in advance rather than people having to wait up to 5 weeks for their first welfare payment, during which time they're expected to live on air. Those things are things that can be changed.
Now, Human Rights Watch Kartik Raj speaking to us there, and we reached out to the UK government for comment on the UN report. A Department for Work and Pensions spokesman sent us this statement saying the United Nations' own data shows the UK is one of the happiest places in the world to live, calling the report a barely believable documentation of Britain, which paints a completely inaccurate picture of our approach to tackling poverty. It cites evidence showing that full-time work is the best way to boost income and quality of life, and says its welfare reforms are focused on supporting people into employment.